You are not stuck because life is unusually hard. You are stuck because too much of your day is decided by appetite, mood, convenience, and whatever steals your attention first. That is the wound this book opens in the first pages. Not your lack of talent, not your lack of information, not your bad luck, your lack of discipline. Most people hear that word and instantly reduce it to punishment, strict routines, early alarms, and joyless self-control. This book does the opposite. It treats discipline as private infrastructure, the hidden system that keeps a life from leaking energy, money, focus, health, credibility, and future options every single day. The book starts with an uncomfortable idea. A weak life rarely collapses all at once. It softens first. It gets slower, messier, easier to distract, easier to tempt, easier to excuse. A person still looks functional on the outside. They answer messages, they go to work, they post online, they laugh, they say they are busy, but underneath the structure is rotting. Sleep is unstable, spending is automatic. Attention is shredded into tiny, useless pieces. The body is neglected in ways that seem small, until they no longer are small. The mind is crowded with unfinished things. They confuse motion with progress, stimulation with reward, and intention with action. This book says that what ruins many people is not one dramatic mistake. It is daily permission to live without standards. That is why the title hits so hard. Why discipline is everything. Not because discipline guarantees a perfect life. Not because disciplined people become millionaires by magic. Not because control makes you superior. It is everything because every meaningful area of life is either protected by it or exposed without it. Health needs it, money needs it, skill needs it, reputation needs it, love needs it, calm needs it, long-term freedom absolutely needs it. The book argues that discipline is the silent force that decides whether your effort compounds or evaporates. One of the sharpest ideas in the book is that discipline is not mainly about effort. It is about identity. Temporary motivation asks, what do I feel like doing today? Discipline asks, what kind of person makes this decision? Motivation negotiates. Identity enforces. Motivation is emotional weather. Identity is architecture. That difference matters more in 2026 than ever before, because modern life is built to weaken any identity that is not actively maintained. Every app wants access to your impulses. Every feed wants emotional reaction before reflection. Every platform is optimized to keep you consuming, not building. If you do not know who you are in action, the system will decide it for you. The book gives a brutal example. Two people both say they want more income, better health, and a stronger mind. The first person watches productivity videos, saves workout clips, follows finance accounts, and tells friends they are working on themselves. The second person does something less exciting. They create spending rules. They train 3 times a week without discussing it. They learn one useful skill deeply instead of 10 vaguely. They stop lying to themselves about being tired when they are actually overstimulated. 6 months later, the first person looks informed. The second person looks changed. The difference is not intelligence. It is not access. It is not secret knowledge. It is the willingness to obey a standard on ordinary days. That phrase matters here. Ordinary days. This book has no obsession with peak performance theater. It does not worship extreme routines for the sake of sounding powerful. It is interested in the hours where lives are actually shaped. Tuesday afternoon, late evening, the moment after stress, the moment before spending, the hour when nobody is watching, the meal you choose when you are annoyed. The browser tab you open when work gets difficult. The purchase you justify because it is small. The extra hour you hand over to numb entertainment, even though you already know you will regret it tomorrow. The book keeps returning to the same principle. Your future is not mainly written in dramatic decisions. It is written in repeated defaults. And that is exactly why so many talented people fail. Talent impresses people early. Discipline protects a person later. Talent can get attention. Discipline keeps promises. Talent can create a strong beginning. Discipline survives boredom, friction, delay, repetition, and pressure. The book is ruthless about this. It says many people have spent years worshiping potential because potential lets them feel special without demanding consistency. Potential is attractive because it keeps success in the realm of imagination, where there is no proof required. Discipline drags everything into reality, where the work either happened or it did not. In one section, the book describes modern weakness in a way that almost feels insulting because it is too accurate. A person wakes up tired because sleep was wrecked by scrolling. They reach for the phone before they reach for thought. Notifications decide the emotional tone of the morning. Breakfast is random or skipped. Money leaks through subscriptions they forgot they had. Delivery habits they rationalize, and tiny digital purchases that feel harmless because there is no physical cash leaving the hand. Work begins with split attention. A difficult task appears, and within seconds the brain searches for relief. Music, tabs, messages, feeds, snack breaks, news, fake research, anything but the hard thing. Evening arrives with that familiar ugly feeling of being busy without being clean. The person tells themselves tomorrow will be different. Then tomorrow is built from the same system. The book does not mock this person. It exposes the environment around them. In 2026, a weak inner system is more expensive than it used to be. AI tools can write drafts, automate admin, summarize meetings, track budgets, even help people run small businesses with fewer employees. That sounds like freedom, but the book points out the hidden split it creates. People with discipline use technology as leverage. People without discipline use technology as anesthesia. The same tools that can multiply output can also multiply distraction. The same phone that can host your business, investments, notes, client pipeline, and training program can also become the machine that erases your attention in 10-second intervals all day. Technology is not the judge. Discipline decides whether it becomes a weapon or a trap. The book is especially sharp on money because it refuses fantasy. It does not promise sudden wealth through hustle slogans. It says something harder and more useful. Before money grows, behavior must stop leaking. A person can earn more and still feel poor because undisciplined money habits will consume every raise. If spending is emotional, income becomes temporary relief, not progress. If budgeting only happens in moments of guilt, there is no real control. If investing is treated like entertainment inside an app, the person is not building wealth. They are gambling with nicer language. Discipline, in the financial sense, means creating rules that still work when your mood changes. It means a system stronger than desire. The book paints a picture most viewers will recognize immediately. Salary lands. For one brief moment, the month looks clean. Then the invisible drain begins. Auto renewals, delivery fees, small status purchases, buy now pay later traps, premium plans used once, random upgrades, streaming services stacked on top of other streaming services, app payments that feel like dust until they are a second utility bill, social spending to avoid feeling left out, tiny rewards after stressful days. None of this feels catastrophic in the moment. That is the point. Disorder rarely enters as a disaster. It enters as convenience. Discipline is the force that notices the pattern before the damage becomes visible. One of the most memorable arguments in the book is that discipline is a form of self-respect with evidence. Not affirmations, not internal speeches, evidence. The person who says they want peace but keeps feeding chaos is not practicing self-respect. The person who says they want freedom but keeps financing impulse is not practicing self-respect. The person who says they want confidence but keeps breaking private promises to themselves is not practicing self-respect. The book says confidence is not built by thinking highly of yourself in the abstract. Confidence is built when your actions stop embarrassing your standards. That line lands because so many people are trying to repair inner insecurity with outer performance. They want confidence from aesthetics, from social approval, from appearing in demand, from looking informed, from sounding ambitious, from projecting control. But the book keeps returning to a harder truth. Confidence that depends on appearance shakes easily. Confidence built from discipline is quieter and much harder to break. Because it comes from memory. You remember that you handled discomfort. You remember that you kept going when you wanted to stop. You remember that you managed money with restraint, controlled your reactions, trained when you did not feel impressive, focused when distraction was available. That memory becomes a private asset. This is where the book turns discipline into something deeper than routine. It becomes emotional control, not emotional suppression. Control. The difference is important. The book does not say become cold. It says stop letting every feeling become a command. Hunger is not a command. Irritation is not a command. Attraction is not a command. Fatigue is not always a command. Insecurity is not a command. The mind produces urges all day. Discipline creates a gap between urge and action. That gap is where adulthood lives, and without it, a person becomes easy to steer. Easy for algorithms, easy for advertisers, easy for toxic people, easy for every appetite that knows how to speak in the language of immediate comfort. There is a section in the book about food that is really about standards. It says the body tells the truth faster than the mouth does. People can say they care about strength, confidence, and energy, but daily intake exposes the real hierarchy. Endless snacking, reactive eating, late-night comfort meals, sugar used as emotional repair, caffeine used as sleep replacement, all of it leaves a signature. The book never turns food into morality. It turns it into feedback. Are you feeding a body that has a mission, or are you feeding a pattern that wants sedation? Discipline here is not perfection. It is refusing to build a body that makes every good decision harder. The same logic extends to sleep. The book attacks the fake pride people take in being constantly drained. In 2026, burnout has become stylish in certain circles. People perform busyness online as if exhaustion itself proves seriousness. The book rejects that entire posture. It says tired minds spend badly, react badly, eat badly, postpone badly, and think badly. Lack of sleep is not only a health issue, it is a discipline issue because it lowers the quality of every choice made afterward. A chaotic night creates a weaker morning. A weaker morning creates weaker work. Weaker work creates weaker income and weaker self-trust. One broken standard spills into 5 others. And then the book moves into a part that many people need to hear more than they realize. Discipline is not just about getting more done. It is also about what you refuse to touch, refuse to check, refuse to buy, refuse to react to, refuse to start, refuse to continue. Refuse to let enter your calendar, your room, your bank account, your relationship, your body, your inner climate. This is one of the most modern parts of the book because life now overwhelms people less through visible danger and more through constant access. Every possible distraction is one tap away. Every weak mood can become a transaction. Every insecurity can be monetized by someone. Discipline is no longer only a tool for action. It is also a filter. The book calls weak filtering one of the great hidden causes of modern failure. People do not only lack ambition, they lack gates. They let too much in, too much noise, too many tabs, too many opinions, too many half-commitments, too many low-quality conversations, too many digital temptations framed as harmless, too many purchases justified by stress, too many opportunities accepted for ego instead of value, too many late nights, too many excuses dressed as recovery. A life without filters becomes crowded long before it becomes meaningful. Discipline is the hand on the door. At this point, the book turns personal and almost confrontational. It asks a question that sounds simple until it becomes impossible to avoid. What in your life is getting stronger because of your daily behavior, and what is getting weaker? Not what do you care about in theory. Not what do you plan to fix next month. What is your current pattern strengthening right now? Is it your body or your fatigue, your savings or your consumption, your skill or your commentary, your focus or your restlessness, your standards or your excuses? The book says life is always moving in a direction even when you call it standing still. That is one of the most painful ideas in the whole narration. Standing still is not neutral. In a fast-moving world, standing still is often disguised decline. Skills age, industries change, costs rise, attention fragments. Opportunities go to people who can execute without constant hand-holding. When automation gets better, employers do not only look for talent. They look for reliability, clarity, initiative, and the ability to focus without supervision. The book says that in a world full of smart tools, disciplined humans become more valuable, not less. Because tools amplify direction, they do not create it. This is where the financial argument becomes even sharper. Undisciplined people often believe more income will rescue them from the consequences of weak habits. The book tears that fantasy apart. More money expands whatever system is already there. If the system is sloppy, the chaos gets better furniture. If the person cannot delay gratification at a smaller level, they usually do not suddenly become measured at a larger one. They just make bigger impulsive mistakes. The book insists that discipline is what turns income into stability, stability into options, and options into freedom. Without that sequence, money remains a temporary mood enhancer with expensive side effects. The book describes wealthy-looking poverty with cruel precision. Nice clothes on monthly debt, premium tech on unstable savings, restaurant spending with emergency funds missing, constant delivery with no investment habit, status signaling without ownership, flexible payment plans masking weak cash flow. This is not an attack on enjoying life. The book is very clear about that. It is an attack on identity built through visible spending while private structure remains fragile. Real financial discipline does not mean living like a machine. It means refusing to purchase relief at the cost of your future strength. Then the narration moves toward work and focus. This part feels especially current because so many people now operate in environments where the line between working and seeming to work has almost disappeared. You can spend an entire day inside project boards, message threads, meeting summaries, AI-generated notes, and productivity tools without moving a single meaningful result forward. The book says undisciplined workers often drown in the appearance of activity. Disciplined workers protect contact with real output. They ask a harder question. What changed because I was here? What moved? What was built? What became clearer? What became easier for the next step? Discipline keeps effort tied to result instead of image. This matters because modern distraction is sophisticated. It no longer always looks like laziness. Sometimes it looks like optimization. Tweaking systems instead of using them. Researching endlessly instead of deciding. Planning content instead of creating it. Watching business advice instead of selling. Reorganizing tasks instead of finishing one. Building personal brands before building competence. The book does not dismiss planning, learning, or strategy. It attacks their misuse as emotional shelter. The disciplined person accepts that the real test begins where explanation ends and execution starts. There is a brutal section on side hustle culture that feels written directly for the present moment. Everyone wants optional income. Everyone wants leverage. Everyone likes the idea of building something that pays without begging a boss for every raise. But the book points out why so many side projects remain digital dust. People want scalable results with inconsistent behavior. They want flexibility without structure. They want money from systems they are too undisciplined to maintain. They launch on emotion and disappear on friction. They buy courses, tools, templates, domains, subscriptions, and software stacks that make them feel active while the actual work remains untouched. Discipline is what turns an idea into a routine sturdy enough to survive boredom. The book refuses to romanticize the process. It says most profitable things become repetitive before they become rewarding. Most strong bodies become boring before they become impressive. Most skill gains feel invisible while they are still forming. Most savings grow slowly before they become protective. This is exactly why discipline matters. It lets a person remain loyal to a process before visible rewards arrive. Without that, life becomes a cycle of exciting starts and disappointing disappearances. The person keeps changing strategy when the real issue is that nothing was followed long enough to compound. One of the most original lines in the book is that discipline is how you stop living at the mercy of the version of you that appears at the worst time. Think about that. The tired version, the insecure version, the lonely version, the angry version, the bored version, the tempted version, the version that wants comfort now and will leave tomorrow to deal with the bill. That version exists in everyone. The book does not deny it. It builds a system so that version has less power. Prepared meals reduce damage. Automatic investing reduces damage. Phone limits reduce damage. Training schedules reduce damage. Spending caps reduce damage. Bedtime rules reduce damage. Clean standards reduce damage. Discipline is not proof that urges disappear. It is proof that they do not get the final vote. That idea extends into relationships in a way many self-development scripts ignore. Undisciplined people do not only hurt themselves, they become unreliable to others. Late replies when it matters. Emotional overreactions, broken promises, financial instability that spills onto partners and family. Health neglect that drains intimacy and self-image. Inconsistent presence, constant crisis, constant chaos. The book argues that discipline is deeply relational because other people experience your lack of order. They live inside the weather of your habits. A disciplined person is easier to trust because their behavior is not swinging wildly with every mood. This is where the book becomes masculine in the best sense without becoming arrogant or cruel. It says strength is not noise. It is self-command. It is the ability to remain useful under pressure, to handle money without flexing, to train without posting every set, to keep your word even when nobody is checking, to regulate emotion without becoming numb, to build slowly without needing applause, to protect the people around you from your own chaos. That kind of strength looks ordinary at first because it is built in silence, but over time it becomes unmistakable. The disciplined person has cleaner eyes, steadier hands, calmer reactions, better timing, fewer dramas, more options. The book also makes a crucial distinction between discipline and self-hatred. Many people fail because they turn discipline into punishment for not being enough. That always breaks eventually. The book presents discipline as respect for consequence. If you care about what your life becomes, you stop feeding what weakens it. You stop calling every limit oppression. You stop treating structure as the enemy. You stop worshiping freedom in the form of endless choice, while your actual life becomes less free. Because that is the paradox the book returns to again and again. Undisciplined living feels free in the moment and expensive later. Disciplined living costs something now and returns freedom later. That is one of the clearest financial truths in the whole book. The purchase you do not make can become the emergency fund that protects your dignity. The hour you do not waste can become the skill that changes your income. The meal you do not eat can become the lighter body that makes work and confidence easier. The reaction you do not give can save a relationship or a reputation. The habit you keep when nobody sees it can become the edge that separates you from people with the same intelligence and better excuses. Discipline is often invisible in the moment because it looks like restraint. But restraint has a long memory. In a powerful section, the author describes modern comfort as a form of slow theft. Not comfort in the healthy sense, not rest, not recovery. The counterfeit comfort that weakens a person while calling itself deserved. Endless passive entertainment after low-quality effort. Cheap treats after self-created stress. Constant convenience replacing capability. Emotional indulgence replacing honest repair. The book says the danger of comfort is not that it feels good. The danger is that it slowly trains a person to expect ease in areas where growth only arrives through friction. And once that expectation settles in, every hard thing starts to feel unfair. That is why the book treats discipline as the immune system of ambition. Without it, every plan gets infected by mood. Every goal gets negotiated downward. Every setback becomes identity damage. Every difficult day feels like proof that the path is wrong. Discipline prevents emotional overinterpretation. It lets a person say this is uncomfortable, but it is not a crisis. This is slow, but it is not failure. This is repetitive, but it is not pointless. This is boring, but boredom is not a valid reason to abandon what matters. There is a section on attention that may be the most valuable part of the entire book for anyone living inside modern media. The author argues that attention is now one of the most traded, stolen, fragmented, and underprotected assets in ordinary life. People protect passwords more than they protect focus. They guard public image more than they guard mental clarity. They spend hours learning about optimization while surrendering the raw material required for any optimization to work. The book frames discipline as attention defense. Not because focus is trendy, but because what repeatedly captures your attention quietly writes your character. If most of your attention goes to noise, outrage, envy, novelty, cheap stimulation, and digital crumbs, do not act surprised when your inner life feels thin and unstable. The book gives a brutal image. A person says they want a stronger future but cannot stay with one difficult page, one serious budget review, one uninterrupted training session, one honest hour of deep work, one evening without reflex entertainment, 1 week of measured spending, 1 month of consistent sleep. They want the outcomes of discipline while protecting themselves from the feeling of discipline. The book says that is the central conflict of modern decline. People want durable results from fragile behavior. That is why the narration keeps pushing the viewer into self-recognition, not to shame them for the sake of drama, but to break a dangerous illusion. Many people still believe their main problem is lack of insight. It is not. They already know most of what is harming them. The issue is ungoverned repetition. They know the spending is loose. They know the phone use is excessive. They know the body is undertrained. They know the sleep is broken. They know the work is diluted. They know the stress response is ugly. They know the calendar is full of things that do not matter. Knowledge without obedience becomes a strange form of self-betrayal. This book keeps forcing that realization into the open. And yet, despite how sharp the message is, the book is not bleak. It is demanding, but it is deeply practical. It argues that discipline becomes easier once a person stops expecting constant inspiration and starts building systems that reduce decision fatigue. The book never sells the fantasy of becoming a perfect machine. It talks about friction design. Put the better choice closer, put the damaging choice farther, make the standard visible, make the budget automatic. Make the training time fixed. Make the workspace clean. Make the bedtime protected. Make the default future friendly. This is not glamorous advice. That is why it works. Life improves when chaos has fewer doors to enter through. The book also challenges the ego that surrounds undisciplined living. Some people secretly enjoy being unpredictable because structure feels ordinary. They want to feel spontaneous, creative, different, intense. But the book asks, what has that chaos actually produced? A messy bank account, unreliable energy, half-finished ambitions, emotional whiplash, wasted weekends, a body they avoid looking at too long, a career built on stress instead of skill. Discipline is not dull, the book says. It is what gives force to talent. It is what gives shape to ambition. Without it, even creativity becomes smoke. There is a great section about the illusion of future rescue. This is the story many viewers tell themselves without noticing. Next month, I will reset. After this busy period, I will get serious. Once work calms down, I will train properly. Once I earn more, I will handle money better. Once I feel motivated, I will become consistent. The book tears through this with one question. Why would a future version of you suddenly become disciplined inside the same environment, with the same habits, using the same excuses? Hope without structural change is just delayed surrender. That line alone feels like it could hit a lot of people right in the chest. The narration then shifts into something more constructive. It describes what disciplined people actually do every day, and the answer is almost disappointingly uncinematic. They remove confusion. They decide in advance. They keep fewer promises and break fewer promises. They do not try to win every hour. They protect key hours. They know their weak moments and prepare for them. They do not build identity from intensity. They build it from repeatability. They review money without drama. They treat their body like useful equipment. They sleep before exhaustion forces them to. They consume less and produce more. They know that if they lose the day early, the rest of the day becomes more expensive. This is where the book becomes extremely helpful for anyone whose life feels scattered. It says the disciplined person is not the person who feels least resistance. It is the person who has reduced the number of decisions that require heroic willpower. Breakfast does not become a debate. Training does not become an emotional referendum. Saving does not become a monthly moral crisis. Phone limits do not rely on daily philosophy. The system carries the person when feeling is weak. That is what most people have been missing. They keep waiting for a stronger mood instead of building stronger rails. And the book never lets the viewer hide behind personality. It says discipline is not something reserved for naturally organized people. It is learned by repetition, environment, consequence, and honesty. Some people start with an advantage, yes, but advantage is not destiny. The book is careful here because it does not pretend everyone begins from the same conditions. Some people carry heavier stress, worse models, more financial pressure, more chaos around them. But the message remains. Within the life you actually have, discipline is still the difference between drifting and directing, between being pulled and choosing, between becoming more dependable or more fragile. There is a striking passage where the author talks about how disciplined people often look boring in the beginning because they are not performing their effort. They are just doing it. They are not always online explaining their plan. They are not always announcing resets. They are not always redesigning their identity in public every 2 weeks. They just keep showing up. The book says this is why many people underestimate disciplined individuals for a long time. Quiet consistency does not entertain the crowd. It simply compounds. Then one day the body is noticeably stronger. The savings are real. The skill is marketable. The emotional reactions are cleaner. The work reputation is different. The person who seemed ordinary becomes difficult to ignore. That idea leads into one of the most satisfying parts of the narration. Discipline changes the texture of daily life before it changes the appearance of life. Bills feel less threatening. Mornings feel cleaner. Work feels more honest. Food decisions produce less regret. Evenings produce less decay. Sleep stops feeling like recovery from self-sabotage. The mind becomes less noisy because fewer private promises are being broken. This is how discipline builds inner stability. Not through magic, not through slogans, but through reduced self-conflict. When your actions stop arguing with your stated values every day, your mind becomes less crowded. The book also addresses the common fear that discipline kills joy. It answers this in a way that feels mature. Undisciplined pleasure often carries hidden anxiety. Overspending carries later regret. Binging carries physical and mental dullness. Constant distraction carries emptiness. Reactive living carries chaos. The book says disciplined pleasure is better because it is cleaner. You enjoy more without owing so much afterward. You spend within reality. You rest without decay. You eat without sabotage. You celebrate without self-disgust. Real joy does not need a trail of damage behind it. At this point, the author makes a move that elevates the whole message. Discipline is not only personal advantage. It is civilizational seriousness at the scale of the individual. That sounds heavy, but the meaning is simple. A society built from impulsive, distracted, financially reckless, emotionally unregulated people becomes easier to manipulate, easier to market to, easier to destabilize. The disciplined individual is harder to sell nonsense to, harder to frighten into bad decisions, harder to bait into outrage, harder to trap in debt, harder to steer with trends. That makes discipline more than self-improvement. It becomes a kind of private sovereignty. This is why the book has such force. It does not talk down to the viewer. It talks to the part of them that is tired of being easy to derail, tired of resetting, tired of being smart in theory and weak in practice, tired of having plans that collapse under appetite, tired of giving the strongest years of life to convenience, tired of watching more focused people quietly walk past them. The book never says you are worthless. It says you are undergoverned. And that is a painful difference, because what is governed can be rebuilt. There is a part about shame that deserves attention. Undisciplined living quietly produces shame because the person keeps seeing evidence of what they are avoiding. The unopened banking app, the tight clothes, the ignored project, the late invoice, the screen time report, the weak stamina, the sleep pattern, the unfinished certifications, the messages they keep delaying, the sinking feeling when someone more disciplined asks a simple question about progress. The book does not use shame as a weapon. It uses it as a signal. Something in your life is no longer aligned with what you know you should be capable of. Discipline is one of the cleanest ways to reduce that shame because it replaces apology with proof. Then comes a section that many viewers may want to replay. The author explains that discipline does not always feel strong. Sometimes it feels quiet and unglamorous. Closing the app, walking past the order button, going to bed on time, lifting the boring set, sending the invoice, studying the page again, reviewing the budget, saying no without explanation, leaving the phone outside the room, ending the conversation before it becomes destructive. Discipline often looks small at the moment of action. But the book says that is exactly why it is underestimated. People are waiting for dramatic effort while life is actually being decided by micro-obedience. The narration gets even sharper when it talks about emotional discipline in conflict. Anyone can look composed when life is smooth. The real test appears when ego is bruised, when a message irritates you, when someone disrespects you, when a plan fails, when the market drops, when a deal disappears, when stress rises at home. The book says undisciplined reactions are expensive. One emotional purchase can set back a month. One rage response can damage a relationship. One impulsive quit can break momentum. One insecure lie can fracture trust. Emotional discipline is not silence at all costs. It is refusing to let temporary heat produce permanent damage. That connects directly to resilience. The book refuses the common weak interpretation of resilience as simply pushing through pain. Real resilience, according to this argument, is structured recovery plus continued standards. It means you do not collapse into chaos because one week got hard. You do not turn stress into permission for self-destruction. You do not let one mistake become a season of excuses. Discipline makes resilience practical. It gives a person routine sturdy enough to survive imperfect periods. That matters because nobody stays at peak energy all year. Life hits. Work intensifies. Family issues happen. Health fluctuates. The disciplined person bends without dissolving. There is a particularly sharp comparison in the later part of the book. Some people use difficult periods to tighten their structure. Others use difficult periods to abandon it. Same stress, opposite response. The first person shortens the workout but still trains, cuts extra spending faster, protects sleep harder, simplifies tasks, communicates more clearly, stops pretending. The second person says everything is too much and hands the week over to impulse. More delivery. More scrolling. More excuses. More avoidance. The book says this pattern decides long-term trajectories more than most people understand. Hard periods reveal whether discipline was real or decorative. The author then returns to money with a point that feels almost surgical. Financial discipline is emotional discipline translated into numbers. Spend now or wait. Show status or build margin. React to fear or follow a plan. Chase excitement or respect time. The market may move. The economy may tighten. Costs may rise. None of that changes the value of disciplined money behavior. In fact, uncertainty makes it more valuable. The person who controls lifestyle inflation, keeps reserves, avoids ego spending, learns useful skills, and thinks in years instead of weekends is not guaranteed luxury. But they are far more likely to have dignity when pressure arrives. The book keeps dignity at the center, and that is a wise choice. Freedom sounds glamorous. Wealth sounds glamorous. Optimization sounds glamorous. Dignity feels more serious. Dignity means you can handle emergencies without panic. You can say no to bad offers. You can leave what is degrading. You can help where it matters. You can stand upright because your habits are not constantly humiliating your future self. Discipline is one of the cleanest roads to dignity. because it builds capability before the emergency demands it. There is also a deep critique of passive identity. Many people describe themselves by preference instead of by practice. They say, I am ambitious, I care about health, I am trying to be better with money, I value growth, I want more freedom. The book asks a brutal question. According to your actual repeated behavior, what are you? Because the body does not hear aspiration. The bank account does not hear aspiration. The calendar does not hear aspiration. Your day records allegiance better than your mouth ever will. This is not meant to crush the viewer. It is meant to restore honesty. Once behavior becomes the standard, delusion loses ground. That honesty becomes empowering in a surprising way. If your current identity is largely the sum of repeated actions, then identity is trainable. Not instantly, not theatrically, but trainable. A disciplined person is often just someone who kept returning to a better standard long enough that it stopped feeling foreign. They stopped asking whether they felt like it and started asking whether this is what they do. They made enough clean decisions that self-respect became easier. They stopped turning every urge into a vote. The book makes discipline feel reachable not because it is easy, but because it is concrete. This is also where the narration can hit the viewer directly. If you have recognized yourself in any of this, not in a vague, inspiring way, but in a specific, painful way, then you already know this book is not describing some distant type of person. It is describing daily decisions. The kind that happen in kitchens, in cars, at desks, on couches, in checkout screens, inside message threads, at midnight, before dawn, after failure, after success, after stress, after boredom. If that is you, write the word steady in the comments, not as a slogan, as a marker that you are done romanticizing chaos. And if this kind of message cuts cleaner than the usual recycled advice, save this video now. Because the people who need it most are usually the ones most likely to lose it in a sea of empty noise by tomorrow. The book itself would probably say that forgetting what hit you is one more form of indiscipline. The point is not to feel exposed for 10 minutes and then drift back into the same pattern. The point is to let recognition become structure. The later chapters of the book deal with standards in a way that feels almost surgical. Standards are not preferences. They are thresholds. What you allow around money, what you allow around food, what you allow around your schedule, what you allow in how people treat you, what you allow from your own excuses. Without standards, discipline has nowhere to attach. The book says many people fail because they want better outcomes without becoming stricter about what they tolerate. They tolerate lateness from themselves, weak work, foggy spending, low sleep, loose speech, low-quality environments. Then they wonder why confidence never stabilizes. The author makes a powerful point here. Discipline is often nothing more than loyalty to a standard after the mood that created the standard has disappeared. That line alone explains half of adult life. It is easy to set goals in clear moments. It is easy to promise yourself change after embarrassment, after a bad photo, after a drained account, after a hard breakup, after a wasted weekend. The test begins later, when clarity fades and appetite returns. Standards that survive mood become identity. Standards that disappear with mood were only emotional decoration. This is why the book treats consistency as a moral issue only in the personal sense, never in the preachy sense. It is about integrity between what you claim matters and what you repeatedly fund with your time, money, and focus. There is no lecture tone here, only consequence. If you keep investing in what weakens you, weakness compounds. If you keep investing in what strengthens you, strength compounds. Life is not always fair, but it is often cumulative. Discipline matters because it decides where the accumulation points. One of the strongest ideas in the closing half of the narration is that discipline is the bridge between self-knowledge and self-trust. Many people know themselves well enough to describe their patterns in great detail. They know when they sabotage, what they avoid, how they spend, when they scroll, why they overeat, why they delay hard conversations, why they stay up too late. But self-knowledge without disciplined follow-through creates cynicism. The person starts to think, I already know myself and I still do nothing. That is dangerous. Discipline restores trust because it turns awareness into action, even small action, especially small action. The book goes even further. It says that every disciplined act is a vote against personal helplessness. Every time you train instead of postponing, you reject helplessness. Every time you move money according to plan instead of impulse, you reject helplessness. Every time you protect attention instead of surrendering it, you reject helplessness. This is not because life becomes fully controllable. It does not. But your role inside your own life changes. You stop being merely affected. You start becoming directional. The narration also refuses the fantasy that once a person becomes disciplined, life gets emotionally flat. In reality, discipline can make life feel more intense in the right ways, because you are no longer dulled by constant overconsumption. Food tastes cleaner when it is not constant escape. Rest feels better when it is earned. Leisure feels lighter when it is not avoidance. Money feels more powerful when it has purpose. Training feels more meaningful when it is part of identity. Focus feels almost luxurious when you have spent years letting everything interrupt you. Discipline does not kill pleasure. It rescues it from overuse. Then the book turns back to the viewer with a challenge that is hard to shake. Imagine what your life would look like if the next year was not built on more information, more inspiration, more content, or more planning, but on cleaner repetition. Same wake time most days, same spending guardrails, same training rhythm, same protected work block, same reduced distraction, same sleep standard, same calmer reactions, same less dramatic life. Would that look boring, or would it look powerful? The book says many people are afraid of discipline because they confuse drama with vitality. In truth, much of what they call excitement is just instability in expensive clothing. There is a beautiful moment where the author talks about the difference between consuming life and shaping it. Consumers chase stimulation, commentary, updates, novelty, and visible status. Shapers build capacity, assets, skill, steadiness, and systems. Consumers need to be pulled by external signals. Shapers generate direction internally. Consumers often look busy because they are constantly reacting. Shapers often look quiet because they are directing force toward fewer things. Discipline is what allows a person to move from one category to the other. This becomes especially real in the age of AI and automation. The people who rise are not only the ones with ideas, they are the ones who can apply tools consistently, learn deeply enough to stay relevant, and execute even when novelty wears off. The book argues that the future rewards disciplined adaptability, not frantic trend chasing, not passive dependence on tools, adaptability with structure. Learn what matters. Drop what does not. Practice enough to remain useful. Keep your mind ordered enough to think under pressure. That is discipline in the new era. Less about rigid tradition, more about stable self-command in changing conditions. The book also has no patience for the weak fantasy that one giant breakthrough will erase years of disorder. Viral success will not teach you budgeting. A raise will not fix your impulse control. A new relationship will not fix your routines. A better apartment will not fix your sleep. A different app will not fix your attention. External upgrades without internal discipline often produce temporary excitement and deeper eventual disappointment. The narration keeps pressing the same point because it is true. Structure is not a bonus. It is the container that stops gains from leaking away. Another memorable line in the book says, "Discipline is how you become expensive to chaos." That is brilliant because it captures something deeper than efficiency. Chaotic people are cheap targets for chaos. One bad mood derails the day. One tempting ad derails the budget. One late night derails the week. One conflict derails the relationship. One uncomfortable task derails the project. Disciplined people are not unbreakable, but they cost chaos more effort. There are systems to fight through, rules to bypass, preparedness to overcome. That resistance changes outcomes. Near the end, the book becomes almost philosophical, but it stays grounded. It says the deepest value of discipline is not money, muscle, or output. though it influences all of them. The deepest value is authorship. You become harder to live through accidentally. That is a powerful sentence. Harder to live through accidentally. Your days stop happening to you in the same passive way. You choose more, you drift less, you build more on purpose. And with that comes a form of peace that soft people often misunderstand. Not comfort, peace. The peace of not being at war with your own stated values every night. That peace is worth more than a lot of people understand. Imagine ending more days without the familiar private disappointment. Without knowing you escaped again, spent again, delayed again, overreacted again, numbed yourself again, promised and broke it again. Imagine replacing that loop not with perfection, but with enough discipline that respect begins to return. The book makes a compelling argument that this is where strong confidence really starts. Not in achievement alone, but in the repeated experience of being able to trust yourself in small moments. If you want the next video to go deeper into how disciplined people handle money without becoming obsessive, write the word control in the comments. That would fit this book perfectly because money is one of the clearest places where daily standards reveal true character. Not public opinion, not style, not slogans, character. And if you know someone who keeps saying they need motivation when what they really need is a stronger system, send them this, not to judge them. To interrupt the lie before another year disappears into comfort and excuses. The closing part of the book is severe, but it earns the severity. It says nobody is coming to install discipline for you. No app, no mentor, no partner, no perfect morning, no lucky month. Help matters, tools matter, good environments matter. But at some point, there is a private decision every adult has to make. Will I continue building a life that collapses under appetite? Or will I become the kind of person who can carry weight without drama? That is the dividing line. Not talent, not background alone, not appearance, not how much you know. What you obey when nobody is forcing you, and this is why the title is not exaggerated, why discipline is everything. Because it touches everything. It shapes the body that carries you, the money that protects you, the mind that guides you, the reputation that precedes you, the work that pays you, the calm that steadies you, the standards that define you, and the future options that either open or close because of what you kept doing when nobody noticed. Discipline is not a punishment for weak people. It is the construction material of strong lives. The final pages leave the viewer with an image that is hard to forget. Two lives starting closer than either person realizes. Same city, same economy, same digital temptations, same modern noise. One life is gradually organized by standards, restraint, focus, training, measured spending, emotional control, and repeatable action. The other is gradually consumed by convenience, impulse, fragmented attention, emotional purchases, weak sleep, random effort, and endless soft negotiations with the self. At first, the difference is barely visible. Then it becomes impossible to hide. One person becomes stronger, calmer, more trusted, more capable, more financially stable, more difficult to break. The other keeps looking for a dramatic reason things never change. That is the real message of this fictional book. Strong people are not built by rare moments of intensity. Rich people are not built only by access or luck. Unshakable people are not built by speeches. They are built by what they do every day when temptation is ordinary, when progress is invisible, when nobody is impressed, when comfort is available, when excuses sound intelligent, when the world offers 1,000 ways to drift. Discipline is the quiet refusal to drift. So if this video made you uncomfortable, good. It was supposed to. Not to insult you, but to show you the exact place where your life is leaking force. Not someday, today, in your spending, in your schedule, in your sleep, in your reactions, in your body, in your work, in what you tolerate, in what you repeat. The truth is not that you need more hype. The truth is that you need cleaner standards and the courage to obey them long after emotion leaves the room. The people who become strong, rich, and unshakable do not wake up special. They build a private order that protects them from becoming weak, poor, and easy to shake. They turn discipline into identity, identity into action, action into evidence, evidence into self-respect, and self-respect into a life with more freedom and less inner collapse. That is not a slogan. That is a system. And once you see it, it becomes very hard to go back to pretending your daily habits are small. You do not need a dramatic new persona. You do not need to perform rebirth. You do not need to announce a war against the world. You need to stop betraying yourself in predictable ways. Close what weakens you. Repeat what strengthens you. Protect what matters before impulse reaches it. Make fewer promises. Keep more of them. Let your days become proof. That is how discipline stops being a harsh word and becomes what this book says it really is: the invisible structure behind health, money, stability, confidence, and freedom.